The United Nations Security Council is urging Gambia's incumbent president Yahya Jammeh to cede power to President-elect Adama Barrow. Spain's deputy permanent representative to the UN said Yahya Jammeh must respect the choice of the Gambian people and transfer power to Barrow.
They renewed their request to outgoing President Jammeh to respect the choice of the sovereign people of the Gambia and to transfer without condition and undue delay power to the President-elect, Mr. Adama Barrow. The members of the Security Council reiterated their call to all parties to exercise maximum restraint and refrain from violence. They further expressed their commitment to continue to follow closely the evolution of the situation in the Gambia in the framework of the conflict prevention role of the Security Council.
The UN Security Council has not yet considered the use of force to aid the political transition in the Gambia. Our UN correspondent Li Ling Tan now examines the other options likely to be considered by the international community in resolving the Gambia issue.
Both the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon and also the 15-member UN Security Council have condemned President Yahya Jammeh's rejection of the election results and have called on him to accept the outcome. And this is a worrying development for the United Nations. In fact, the UN Security Council is holding an urgent meeting behind closed doors on Gambia to hear the latest update from the Undersecretary-General for Political Affairs, Jeffrey Feltman, who will also brief them on diplomatic efforts that have been underway during this electoral process. Now, the UN, what more can it do? The UN can exert more pressure on the government of President Jammeh to accept the election results. It can opt to mediate as well. And if the situation deteriorates to the point where there might be civil unrest or violent clashes, the UN can also it can also impose sanctions. So there are a range of options for the United Nations to insert itself into this, but of course the UN is limited in that it cannot force the president's hand. The UN has to respect the internal process of a government. What happens if the government doesn't respect its own election results, as we've seen? What happens if that situation deteriorates, violent clashes erupt, and there's a potential that civil unrest could spill over into the region? Well, the UN can't really do much because it's beyond its jurisdiction to compel the government to accept the results of the election. The UN can persuade, it can mediate, and it can impose sanctions. But as we've seen in the past in other political crises, these measures don't always reap results. In Syria, Burundi, South Sudan, Libya, whether the UN is mediating or imposing sanctions, these don't go very far. And the line between respecting sovereignty and restoring constitutional stability becomes even more blurred when countries outside of, separately from the UN, intervene themselves, either directly or by proxy, by either supporting opposite sides in a conflict or providing weapons. So that line becomes so much more blurred, and it's not something the UN can control or manage.